This isn't just a podcast, it's a movement. The Middle Ground Mike is fighting for truth and unity. Subscribe now, support us today. Links are in the notes. Stand with us. The news doesn't cover the whole scope of it. They only cover the part that's going to take 5 seconds, and then they click off and say good luck.
Yeah, I mean, and even worse, it's they want a specific story to tell, so they'll depict it from an angle. It's kind of like if two people are watching a movie and you ask them to summarize it, and you have to think to yourself, is that the same movie? Did you watch the same movie I watched? Because I didn't get anything out of that. And that's really happening now, especially with the news cycles and what the media decides to report and conveniently to fail to report it under the selective process that they have, which is anything but,
Yeah, I mean, we definitely know they're not objective. Something that I've been trying to educate people on more is a lot of the media, they're more registered entertainment companies now rather than news organizations because they can get away with twisting things around and not be as legally liable. People, when I tell people that, they don't believe me. They're like, "No, you're just a communist, or you're a this, or you're," and I'm like, "Don't gotta take my word for it. It's public information. Go look it up yourself." They're not obligated to tell you the truth at this point. And that's the scary part, you know? So are our rights, like some of the court cases recently, like we were talking about the Tina Peters thing, the case that you've been really involved in, there's been a couple where things just, I'm trying to think of the best way to put it. I know in Georgia, they've discovered some certain things with the election issues. I haven't seen like complete clear pictures of it because depending which website or thing you go to, it's a completely different story. So are these rights really pushing?
yeah. I mean, it's bad enough that we have selective prosecution in this country, right? So, you have people that have been in office or have been married to people in office that if you took the selective prosecution pendulum and put it on the other side, they would be in jail for 20 life sentences. But we now can label others that, are quote unquote enemy of the state because they believe in freedom and justice and have opinions and First Amendment rights that are greatly taken away. So now what we're seeing is a lot of things that are going in courts you would never have thought. And you have juries that are like, for example, Washington, D.C., that are, anyone who has a political angle that's 51% or greater to the right, no matter what they're charged with, they're going to be found guilty. And I mean, the numbers are the numbers. And you have also judges that have been appointed there. You have to ask, were they appointed based upon their ability to be an objective judge, or were they there for a specific purpose? And until recently, we pretended that they were there for a specific, for their objectiveness. But now we don't even shy away from the fact that, they are selective appointments. Biden stated with the latest Supreme Court justice nomination that he's not looking for the best United States Supreme Court justice to live and serve a lifetime on that bench at the highest level. He's looking for the best one that also happens to fit a certain gender and a certain color of skin. And yet that's not considered racist. I don't know what is if that's not. But this is the world we're living at. So now you don't have the best judge. You have the best judge that has specific requirements, which may by definition mean that there's 30, 40 other judges that are more qualified than that person. But you're basing it off of things that you and I and everyone else in this world has not had the right to choose. I wasn't asked when I was born what color I wanted to be, what gender I wanted to be, what country I wanted to be born in. It was just all brought onto me by circumstance. But yet, when it comes to getting to become a Supreme Court at the highest level, all of those things that nobody has chosen, they were born into, are now becoming reasons to hire them. And that's kind of anti-American. It's, at some point when the Equal Rights Act movement happened, there was definitely a need for it. But, at some point you have to ask yourself, is this something that's always going to happen? And at what level do we decide otherwise? And we're seeing that in the justice system as well. Selective prosecution. We really need to not charge this person because of the optics, but we'll charge this person because of the optics. And that's so anti-American. And that's one of the things that we're really working on right now, which leads to someone like Tina Peters and the work that we're working on her side.
Yeah, I had seen she won the case, and then the state picked it up, if I'm right?
No, no, what happened it was this was always a state issue. Technically, you could say it's a federal issue, but the state decided to charge under state law. So to start at the beginning for your listening audience, so they don't know who Tina Peters is she was supervisor of elections in the state of Colorado during the 2020 election. She saw voter irregularity. She was supposed to update the machines, which would have destroyed certain critical evidence that would support these irregularities. And so she tried to preserve it, sent it to a whistleblower. Now she's a 70-year-old woman spending 8 years in jail. So we got this to the attention of the right people. The president, as recently as last week, on his Truth Social page, said free Tina Peters. He pardoned her and trying to lobby or suggest to the governor of the great state of Colorado that she is a political prisoner. She's a 70-year-old woman with no criminal history whatsoever, facing a significant, pretty much a life sentence in horrific living quarters. She's not even in an 8x6 cell. She's on a 3x5 cell that was previously a closet. It was a janitor's closet, but this women's prison that she's in, they needed space. So they put her with another roommate. So when she needs to stand up, she has to count on her roommate to be on the bed. I mean, this is hell she's living through. Somebody who has pre-existing medical issues that are only going to be exacerbated by the living conditions that she's subjected to. And this is not how we should treat our enemies, and this is how we treat our own. It says a lot about our country and our society if we're okay with it. And people look at this as Democrat versus Republican, and that's what's the most difficult thing is it's a humane issue. And I don't care if you're a Democrat. In fact, I might fight twice as hard if you was a Democrat doing this. And the reason why is because I want equal justice for all. And I don't want selective prosecution, but clearly, unequivocally, this was selective prosecution. Go
Oh,
against
yeah.
those who speak up against the elite, so those who are the unelected officials running this government one way or another, directly or indirect.
I mean, you're not wrong at all. If this goes the way that you think it does, or the way it seems to where it's going to go, like, they're going to do everything they can to keep her there. What does that mean for a lot of these elections going forward? Like, how do people trust them?
I mean, let's question what the president's trying to do right now. I mean, the bill that he's trying to get passed is you must prove that you're a citizen and have a valid driver's license. And the argument on the other side is they're using racism to state racism. It's so obvious. I mean, they're saying that people of minority status, and they're really through innuendos, and blacks in particular, do not have the ability to get a driver's license to prove that they can vote, and therefore it's voter suppression. In order to say that, you must, you know, recognize at some level that you are being extremely racist and inaccurate. I mean, to get a cell phone, to fly, to get a job, to do everything else in life, all walks of society have the ability to get some sort of identification. So you have to ask yourself, what is the truth behind this? The truth is that they know that they count on votes that are not qualified votes. And where's the outrage? I mean, the best thing about being an American is, amongst having the freedom, is to get to vote, to select those who really lead and represent our country. And you take that away from all the other people who are validly able to vote by giving people, who have no rights to be in this country in the first place, the right to vote. Yeah, I couldn't imagine taking my car and driving north or south from in Florida. So it would probably be quicker to get to Mexico, but you have the Florida Panhandle. I mean, maybe you drive north, get to Canada, and demand that you get equal rights, due process, and the right to vote. And if you get deported, you have the right to stay there and to fight your case. In what country exists like that? You have to ask why.
No,
And the answer to me is simple. It's power. It's a way to get people in power.
well, I mean, the 1,000%. This is about protecting the establishment in a lot of ways. You know, let me ask you something. This is relates directly to this. To the person listening right now. They go to work, they pay taxes, they vote just like you and I. and, they feel like none of it matters. Are they wrong? Or is the system actually built so that feeling this is correct? And do we have the ability to fix it?
Let's take a quick break.
The Middle Ground, Mike, isn't just another podcast. It's a movement for unity, for truth, for a future beyond the left and the right. But movements don't grow without people willing to stand up. Subscribe now on Buzzsprout. Fuel this mission directly on PayPal. Every subscription keeps the fire burning. The links are in the show notes. Be more than a listener, be part of the Middle Ground.
First of all, we definitely have the ability to fix it, but I agree with that sentiment. I think your vote doesn't matter because if it's tied and washed away with people who have no voter status, that during the COVID times, you had people who didn't even ever vote. And all of a sudden they're getting ballots in the mail. People are knocking on their doors. They're saying, it's the American way to ballot harvest. I mean, it's all these things that get a specific outcome and that they take away from the people who are actually pillars of society that are doing what is necessary to get their voice out there. If you take time from work and wait in line and vote, I mean, that really means you're dedicated. Or if have the ability to be proactive and vote on a day that, allows your schedule to be flexible enough to vote. What I think we should do is have election days every 4 years or, midterms, which is every other year, as a specific day where we get off from work if we vote. I mean, that should be in the law so that we have access to vote. We should all vote on the same day. And mail-in ballots should be limited because they're subjected to common sense fraud. I mean, where is common sense? It's not so common anymore because it's an inconvenient truth.
Yeah, common sense went out the window about 4 or 5 years ago. COVID took common sense and just lit it on fire and said, good luck ever finding this again. That's definitely how it feels. you know,
I know.
it's that trust that, like I was saying, people have with, that because like what you just said on, what I asked, those are the questions that it seems like nobody on either side will answer if they're not part of. I know the president's got the confidence to answer that, but he's also a he does not care, but a lot of politicians at different levels, they kind of shy away from answering those questions. It seems like, and I mean, I get why, it's their career that's on the line if they don't answer it the way they should, but someone benefits from your rights getting smaller, right? Our rights shrinking. And that's not a conspiracy. I mean, that's just that's the fact of life. Something gets taken away, somebody benefits, right? The pot's only so big. It goes like this. And, for me, both parties always campaign on freedom, just like I had done an episode not long ago where they were like, both parties here in Michigan, we want to go on affordability. And I said, okay, well, what does affordability look like to you? I know what affordability looks like to me, but if I'm voting for you, what does affordability look like? And that's where that's why people feel like their vote doesn't matter. Because you got somebody who's, oh, hey, I care about affordability. Well, what does that look like? I want to cut prices. Well, that's great.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait for the politicians, if they could speak the truth. So remember that movie with Liar Liar with Jim Carrey in it?
Yes.
If you could imagine what these politicians would actually say. For example, my campaign would be like, I want to increase my net worth to over $30 million. So that's why you should vote for me. I want insider trading that we put people in jail for. Martha Stewart went to jail, but I want to do that so that I can make better returns than anybody in the history of Wall Street, because we really need to put an end to the corruption in Wall Street. And this is a great way of doing it. Just feeding to our own personal pockets. Could you imagine if politicians said that? But we know they're doing it. We know their motivation. I mean, you have Ilhan Omar, who was, had a net worth of like zero, now worth $30 million. Oh, yeah. But it's a salary of like $150,000 a year. I mean, where's the outrage?
Yeah. No, I had the Republican that's running against her on here in, I think it was January.
Yeah.
And she said, she goes, she's like, I'm not afraid to walk the streets. She's, and I believe she's an Iraqi immigrant.
Mm-hmm.
And she essentially was saying Ilhan Omar is like overblowing the quote unquote danger from ICE. She's like, she's really pushing it like way out of the stratosphere. And I had personally challenged a politician that's in my local community he was on Facebook going, ICE buying a detention facility, this, that, and the other thing. I said, if you truly, at this part, what they're doing truly bothers you, why haven't you been having an issue with it since it was, brought about in 2003? I said, because they've had incidents, there's just like, the police, right? There's always complaints about this, that, or the other thing. Not to minimize anybody dying, but it's just, if you truly had an issue with that, why didn't you say something before? And literally the response I got from it was, I'm just a state senator.
Yeah. It's,
Well, you sure had no issue saying something about it.
yeah.
And that was my thing with it. And it was, like, if you have an issue with something, it's totally fine. We all have issues with certain things, but if you're if that's the vine you're gonna die on, at least make sure, you stick to your guns, or you say, hey, this is why I changed. And the voters will respect if you change your tone, as long as you're honest with them.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, and I think that's the key, is as long as you are honest with them. The problem is, I ran for office once, not even to win, although at first I probably wanted to win, and then I realized that the nature of the position that I decided that, like, hey, going into politics is crazy. I mean, you could speak to a person for 2 hours just to get one vote, and then you have to take away a lot of things that you may feel agreeable to in order to generate a voter base that will, you know, represent, or get you into office. And if you don't do the right thing by them, I mean, you're now stuck in a rock and a hard place. And the major challenge is that we know that politics is slimy, and it gets slimier by the minute. I mean, we have such a crazy society right now where it's like almost like having a civil war. And, people don't care as much as what's happening in Washington versus the rhetoric, the delivery of the message, and the direction of the news media and the angle. There is no objectivity. And it's funny because I have a 12-year-old son. He's like, well, if you listen to Fox News all day, how do you know what people on the other side are going to argue? And why do you know that you're right? Because you don't hear the other side. So then you try to hear the other side, and or MSNBC, and you see how they're covering the same exact thing. And it's almost as if we're living in a different country. It is so bipolar. It's so, polar opposite, I should say. And you ask yourself, why? Um, and then you have social media that, it's clickbait. So you have these people in Congress that all they care about is getting something that they can say, aha, I had that statement. So now people can watch me and follow me, even though that they have nothing to do or no care in the world for what they're saying. They just need to do it to get people, and their attention. It's a crazy world we're living in. And it's a world that I don't want to pass away. I don't want to pass away, but I don't want to pass off to my children without, at least fighting for the things that we could all agree on. I mean,
Right.
if we're really honest with ourselves, we could agree on certain things. But politics have gotten so extreme that either you have to accept something here or something there, and there's no middle ground. And unfortunately, we don't have a country that has a third party option, or how's this for an idea? No party whatsoever. People actually, support what they believe in because it's what they believe in, not necessarily what they have to believe in. You have to pick one side or the other. So you're eliminated by choice, right? And then they say, well, you're not truly a Republican because you don't agree with, these 80 things. You only agree with 55 of them, and then you have someone on the other side doing the same thing. And you have, and you see how obvious it is. You have Jewish people on the Democratic side that are supporting terroristic ideas that, if allowed, would, lead to the destruction of their own people and, be the next Holocaust. And yet, where are those people sticking up, fighting and protecting? They're just protecting their own interest, and their own interest is more important than their own people and their own country. And that's clearly obvious by seeing what's going on with people like Chuck Schumer in office.
Yeah, he's
Bernie
down to
Sanders.
360.
all these people that could be a voice of reason. And then you have people like in my jurisdiction, Lois Frankel, who's Jewish and Hispanic. And where is she? Oh, I see her aligning with the crazies on the left. And, it's just, let's get to a middle ground where we could all agree on things. Let's try to work on, they had, remember, well, I'm dating myself, but in the 80s, they had Democrats for Reagan. Can you imagine they had Democrats for Trump?
And that would not happen now. I mean, you'd see holy water boiling at every church on the planet probably.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it would just it would be it would just I don't even know how to fathom that.
We could start our own organization called Prostitutes for Monogamy and get more followers.
Yeah, no, I mean, I generally, I depending on the issue for the most part, I'm center, depending, I can go either way. And, sometimes I post things, people will go, I had a guy on that was a fellow in the Obama White House, right? But yeah, I had him on because he specialized in the China policy, and I'm like, okay, and this guy is very pro-American. I mean, anybody who watched the episode would know he was talking about how America can, we can beat China, but just because he was Asian on the thing, I was getting called a communist, a Chinese Communist Party member, promoting their agenda. And I would just go back and I'm like, have you actually watched it? Or are you just going because this guy's Asian on the thumbnail? You're thinking that I'm promoting propaganda. And I'm like, watch it and you might be surprised. Then I had people from China going, you're a Western propagandist. And I was like, oh my God, and for me, it's, the one thing I can't figure out, if people are this frustrated, especially voters, and no one's actually really doing anything besides folks like you to stop it, why aren't more attorneys doing what you're doing? Is it money, the risk, the retaliation?
The fear right now is one of the things that we're seeing. That's quite scary, is that they're going after attorneys that are loud and proud, as I would say. We see things that I've never seen before. I didn't even think that was even in the rules. Lawyers that not only have they lost their license for unauthorized practice of law activities, but now above and beyond that, they're going after them criminally, putting them behind bars. And so you see that, or a lot of lawyers, good quality lawyers, are working for big law firms. And these big law firms say, we agree with what you're saying, but we can't support it. I've taken political cases to big law firms on behalf of the charity, and I have attorneys that, are a lot more right wing than I am, that support just about everything that the president would say. And they said, I can't do this, but we agree. Because the firm is adamant that you can't take this on. So what you really see is that the president has, and people who have political ideas are limited to having access to the best of the best because, the consequences, the perception. And this is not the country that, we should be proud of. I mean, there's a lot of things we should be proud about this country, but there's a lot of things that, for being the greatest country in the history of mankind, as they say, well, we need to get some basic things taken care of. We put more people in jail for outrageous sentences, for crimes that didn't even know were crimes, for prosecutions that are highly selective. I mean, that's not the ideology of a civilized nation. It's actually, the opposite of that. That's what we're doing. It's like banana republic ideas that are mainstream in America. And people, the hardest thing for me is as somebody who deals on the political side often, is to see that if you're a Republican and you see damage to a Democrat, whether they're, losing a right, a fundamental freedom, and we could look the other way and say that's fine because they're a Democrat, or vice versa. We're no longer a civilized nation. I mean, the enemies in this country, the people that we don't agree with based on political understanding or who's in office, or, one might think there's two genders and the other say there's 92 genders. The right to justify a difference in opinion and, not think that it's okay to penalize it, or to think it's okay to penalize or hurt somebody because they have a different philosophy than you. It's not the country I want to live in.
No, I mean, it's frustrating, and we are months away from the election cycle that could define the next decade. Rights are on the ballot, whether a lot of people realize it or not.
Hmm.
You know, independent voters are the fastest growing block in America, really. I mean, and I believe the last poll was 43%. But the system, keeps shrinking their options. Does it crack before 2026 or does it hold? Or, are people gonna be able to like step in and go, hey, these are my rights?
What I'm hoping will happen is when Trump ran and JD Vance took over as the vice president. I like JD. I think he's really articulate. He's incredibly intelligent. I met him once in Palm Beach at a book signing before I was like in his late 20s. And so I still think of him as this kid. And then I was like, oh, there's the next candidate for president. But then I saw Marco Rubio and what Marco Rubio has done. Like you have Stephen A. Smith, epitomizes everything that's great in this country. I couldn't stand him when he was a sportscaster on ESPN. I thought he
Yeah,
was
me neither.
mean jerk, right? And I'll say that lightly. And then he became political, and I don't agree with probably 75% of what he says, but I will fight for everything he says because I agree with his right to say it. And when he talks on Sean Hannity, I'm like, most of the time I agree with him more than Sean Hannity. But what he said and why I bring him up is that he would vote for Marco. Someone like a Marco, there is no one on the other side except maybe like a Fetterman that, will cross over and get that independent voter. And that voter is the largest voting, and this is why we can never predict an election, right? Because Republicans will always vote Republicans, Democrats, always Democrats, but these independents, man, it's most basic thing why they would vote for somebody such as, well, the economy's doing better with this person, or I can't put food on my plate because of this, or, it's the most basic things. And, you need somebody that can speak to that because that's like the majority, but has no voice or no platform.
Yeah, no, I mean, Stephen A. Smith, I don't agree with everything he says a lot either, but I've noticed he's become very center as the months have gone on. And the one person who, and I might get chastised by a lot of people on the right for this, that I
Mhm.
have really come to respect in the last year is Bill Maher.
Yeah.
You
No,
know,
I was about to say that. If Bill Maher ran for office, I mean,
I'd vote for him.
mhm.
I
I
mean,
mean, I wouldn't be so upset if whoever I voted for lost to Bill
okay,
Maher.
that's a better way of putting it.
At least he's, what he said on, you ever watch that show with Seinfeld? It was comedians in cars, getting coffee.
Yes, I've seen it. I didn't watch the episode, but I know which one you're talking about. I know the show you're talking about.
Yeah, so it's on Netflix. I mean, he did like 100 episodes, and he gets these comedians, and they, as the name suggests, they're getting in a car, and then they go get coffee, and they just tape this conversation. The budget's like probably like zero, and it's one of those shows that you can sleep, wake up, and you're not missing much, but it's enjoyable and it's good background entertainment. So it's kind of like other reality TV, which I'm discovering just not to watch, but to put in the background.
Oh yeah.
But he had Bill Maher on, and Bill Maher, I mean, he's brilliant. I'll give him that. I'll go on one tangent before I get back to this, before I forget. He had this whole conversation with Charlie Kirk about religion one time. You have to listen to that
Mhm.
podcast because
Yes,
it is
yep.
brilliant. I mean, I met Charlie. I was on the board for Turning Point, so I knew Charlie personally. I would, you know, from time to time, he would call me and ask for advice, which was crazy. So I knew how brilliant Charlie was. And I could give stories after stories. And to have someone like Bill Maher to compete at that level of intelligence and to have the counter argument against somebody who knows every single passage of the Bible verbatim and can explain with great specificity the interpretations and from different value systems and how they interlope. I mean, just incredible stuff. And here, Bill Maher on the opposite side. Wow. I mean, incredibly brilliant, incredibly. But going back to comedians in cars getting coffee, what was really quite interesting, in fact, out of all the episodes, I remember him while he was in the car, he wasn't even getting coffee yet. He said, the left is so extreme to the left that they, at one time, being a liberal meant that you protect the voices that are unheard or underrepresented. And these voices shall all be heard so that you blend together as a society. But now they're concerned about the minorities that, if given the power, those people would want to kill you.
Yes.
And then, then you hear things like queers for Palestine.
Sorry.
It's like I said, prostitutes for monogamy. It's the same thing. It makes no sense, because the second a queer goes into Palestine and they know that you're a queer supporting queers for Palestine, though, it's like, let's talk about this. Let's go to the 8th floor of this building. Push you over. That's what they do. So at some point, you can't be so open-minded that you become closed-minded, and all you care about is the minority representation, to the point where, given the power, they will destroy you. And that's the opposite side of conservatism. But I boil it down, and what we really do with the charity, and it's not left, it's not right, it's just 3 fundamental things for a society to survive. And it's the 3 Fs. It's family, the family, not the government, but the family to count on when you lose your job, when you need help. If we encourage family values, you have family, that's one pillar. The second is freedom. Without freedom, we don't have a society. And the third is faith. Without believing that there's a higher being, doesn't matter what your religion is, as long as your religion doesn't want to destroy the other religions, or no religion at all. But you should have the ability to say, this is what I believe in, and this is why I wake up every day, and why I go to sleep at night. And if you look at where money goes and the donations, and where the most generous donations they are, time and time again, they're based upon faith.
Well, yes.
Catholic organizations, Jewish organizations. So all of a sudden, the government is shrinking exponentially because those 3 pillars are working seamlessly together. And that's what we do. I have a charity called the American Rights Alliance, and those are the 3 things that we're doing. And we're doing it fighting through the court systems right now, and dealing with a lot of selective prosecution, because it scares me, because with selective prosecution, you have no freedom.
Right. No, you don't.
And so that's how we're dealing with the freedom side.
No. And what's one thing people, I know our time's limited. What's one thing people can do to support the American Rights Alliance? And the website address again.
It's the American Rights Alliance.org. The best thing to do is donate. And the second best thing is donate. And the third thing is donate.
I totally get that.
The reason why we say that is that we work with outside counsel at discounted rates, but cases are 6 figures. One case. And we're only moving the dial very slowly, because it's kind of like picking up water with your hands and trying to put it into a bucket. It's just so much that needs to be done, but we need to move things in the right direction. So, part of what we do is we're dealing with filings with the Supreme Court, what's called amicus briefs, and telling the Supreme Court things that they should consider about how they should decide a case, what unintended consequences there may be. Other thing are, we see people in jail like Tina Peters. We have various other cases just like that, or are being prosecuted. We've worked on getting a lot of January 6th pardons, because, again, it's selective prosecution. It's, you may say, well, it was an insurrection. I'll tell you why it's not. We'll go back and forth, but hopefully we can grab a cup of coffee or drink a pint of beer at the end, because we'll have a respectful, meaningful conversation. But at the end of the day, the one thing I think both sides of the aisle can see is there are certain people there that were prosecuted for not doing anything except walking through the Capitol building thinking that it was a peaceful protest. And yeah, there are outliers. There are bad people. There are bad people everywhere. That's why we still have locks on our doors. But 1,000 people pass your house every day. Not one thinks to open the door and try to steal it. But you still put a lock on your door because, all it takes is one. But we've done a bunch of pardon work and helping people after January 6th. We got this guy by the name of Dan Wilson pardoned because after he was pardoned, they put him back to jail because when they arrested him, they saw a gun in there that wasn't registered, but they would have never been there but for the fact that they were there to arrest him in the first place, which the president pardoned. So he got 2 pardons from the president within the last 8 months, which is, something I would never want to put on my resume, not 1 pardon, but 2, because if we have an open and just society, we don't have to worry about pardons. But we've been doing a lot of work on that regard, trying to get Tina Peters out of jail. We got the federal pardon. It's just more of a ceremonial statement than, something to get her out of jail, although we're trying to put some legal argument to get her out of jail under the federal pardon system. But what we're really trying to do, what really could help is just involvement. So if you can't donate and you can't donate and you can't donate, what you can also help is find people, round people up that can do events for us, dinners. One of the things we're starting to do is, having dinners like round tables where you have people who can donate and I speak up. If you're an attorney, volunteer time, every lawyer can use pro bono hours. What better way to use pro bono hours and make a difference for society than using it for the American Rights Alliance? If you don't have the ability to write a check, what you could also do is tell the world that we exist and need our help. And those people will find people who will find people to get the right help. If you have an expertise in something that deals with those 3 pillars, family, faith, and freedom, that align with the American Rights Alliance, we're not a political organization. We're an American first organization that just so happens to be dealing with a lot of things that have happened recently. So it's become politically, but long term, we look at ourselves as the ACLU for America, not for special interests. We're fighting based on those 3 pillars. So you could find us all over social media. It's Donate ARA or at ARA Donate, depending on what your favorite social media medium is. And you could find us on the news. We have a show that we cover our cases from time to time on Real America's Voice. It was something we founded, but we just use now to cover certain shows. It's called A Case for America. And we highlight some of the cases that we're working on there. It's 4:00 on Saturdays on Real America's Voice, which is if you have internet TV or I believe direct TV, you could find it really easily. If not, you could find it on your phone or on the computer at Real America's Voice. And just make sure that, we are known. So tell everybody that we exist and we're here fighting for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And we're here to help.
Oh, and I appreciate it. Evan, I appreciate you coming on and going back and going even deeper on this than a lot of people. Right. Everybody, the links to the American Rights Alliance are going to be in the description. Go
Mhm.
check out, they're fighting a lot to help things that affect you, even if you don't realize it. And I'll leave it here. If you've ever felt like the government keeps getting crazier and your voice keeps getting smaller, you're not paranoid. You're paying attention.